June of 1864, Grant has arrived at the last major railroad hub connecting Richmond with the outside world, and that is Petersburg. He tries to take the city by force, by frontal assault, but he fails. It's just too impregnable. So for over a year, or just under a year, excuse me, June 1864 to April of 65, he is going to besiege the town of Petersburg. You might have seen the movie Cold Mountain with Jude Law and Nicole Kidman, and there is a massive explosion during the one of the opening scenes of the movie. This is Petersburg in the famous Battle of the Crater. But nonetheless, by April 1st, 1865. Lee is forced to surrender Petersburg. The last remaining railroad line is cut, and Petersburg is going to fall. And Lee is going to famously message Jefferson Davis, his commander in chief, that Richmond is going to that Petersburg is going to be abandoned, and Richmond eventually will fall. And Davis, he's at church at the time. He's going to leave, tidy up his office a little bit, and then flee. And after he flees, Richmond is going to fall to the Union. And we have a very poignant scene after that. Lincoln is going to basically leave Washington D.C. and he's going to come down to Washington. He's going to come down to Richmond, and he's going to tour the city. He's going to be walking during the streets, and the slave population that's there is going to come out and greet Lincoln. Lincoln's going to go into the Confederate White House. He's going to sit down at Jefferson Davis's desk and ask for a glass of water. Thank God that he had reached this point so far, and basically just says, you know what, we need to end this now. And so, with the fall of Richmond, Lee is now going to be going to race westward towards a city known as Appomattox Courthouse. On April 8th, 1865, Grant and Lee start exchanging letters to one another. Basically, Grant tells Lee, surrender your army. This cause is hopeless. Any sort of loss of life from now on is going to be on your head, not mine. And although he's reluctant to surrender, Lee is going to eventually agree to meet with Grant. And Lee is basically going to say that there is nothing left but to go and see General Grant. I had rather die 1,000 deaths. On April 9th, the two men meet for the first time. Ironically, it's going to be at a house owned by a man named Wilbur McLean in the city of Appomattox Courthouse. McLean had lived in 1861 in Manassas Junction, and in fact, the war is going to begin practically in his backyard. So after that battle, he moves. He moves to Appomattox Courthouse, and where he thinks that the war is never going to find him. Well, guess what? The war does find him. And in fact, it effectively ends in his living room. That Lee and Grant are going to meet for the first time since the Mexican War. The two men, they're going to chit chat a little bit. They're going to talk about how they actually met each other. They saw each other during the Mexican War, but nonetheless, Grant would rather talk about that. But Lee says, "Well, let's come to the business at hand," and Grant agrees. Grant offers generous terms. He confirms the terms that he told Lee that he would accept to have his army paroled, basically put in timeout, because Lee is very worried. There are not many days before this, Lee, the Union newspapers are asking for Lee's head, demanding it, saying that this guy needs to be strung up for treason. So Lee asks, what are your terms? What are your terms? Let's confirm them again. And Grant offers generous terms. For example, the officers and the men of Lee's army are going to be surrendered and paroled, basically put in timeout until further exchanged. All arms, with the exception of the officers' swords, were going to be captured as war materials. So the only thing that the Confederate army in Northern Virginia is going to have is their officers' swords. And Lee is going to make one simple change. He's going to say, General Grant, we have our men brought their own horses. They have a horse. It's because they were their own. They were not issued a horse by the federal by the Confederate government. Can they take them home? And Grant says yes, they can. And with that, the war, with that, Lee is done. His army is paroled. They are going to go home. Basically with a whimper. It ends with a whimper when you think about it. I mean, there's no huge trial. There's no marching all these guys into prison of war camp. Grant just says, just go home. Let's just have peace. Just go home. Lee's surrender begins a series of surrenders throughout the old Confederacy. The last armies are going to surrender happen in May and June, but nonetheless, Lee's army effectively ends the war. And so Appomattox Courthouse, Lee's surrender is the traditional ending spot of the Civil War.